Hi everybody, welcome back to the stream. This is our third and final day for the UX Design Week for our particular segment, and I'm Danielle Morimoto, joined with Jeannie Huang.
Yeah, so hi guys, if you haven't been tuning in for the last 2 days, I'm Jeannie, I'm one of the senior product designers. I also work at Adobe on the team that's Behance in New York, so I'm here for the week to kind of talk about UX and my process and what kind of projects that, how I would kind of execute a design project in front of you.
Yeah, and so looks like everyone's joining in on the stream, seeing some familiar faces. So welcome in the chat. Let us know where you're joining us from. See Kevin Schneider, you're back. Welcome. Tim, Gelso Design, so some familiar faces. And yes, today we are going to, for the next 2 hours, be designing in Adobe XD, our prototyping tool. And Jeannie will recap sort of where we left off from the past 2 days, but she's been designing a website for her floral designs.
Yep.
So we can take a look at that. But before we get started, I do want to mention, of course, we have our daily giveaway. So be active in the chat and you can win the Adobe XD socks. Welcome everybody. Let's see, we have Zulma from San Diego. Hello.
Brazil.
Luis from Chicago. Yes. Oh, we have people from Brazil. Is it Zup? 7-Up design? No. Welcome everybody. But yes, I know we've talked a lot about these socks and they're very hyped and they are great socks. And today I actually wore my socks. And so, well, because this has been a whole thing. I feel if you've joined us for the past couple days, I've sort of talked about that I would wear these socks, but never actually did because I was scared that it was going to be too unprofessional. But I think today's the day.
Should we do it?
Yeah, if you're curious. Curious what these socks look like. There you go.
In real life, in the flesh.
Although I have to admit, I have very small feet, and these are like one size fits all socks. They're so large on my feet. Like it's kind of ridiculous. I don't know if like it was really worth wearing these socks, but I wore them anyway. Now that that's over with. Let us know if you have any questions in the chat today for Jeannie or myself around what she's working on, or let's see, anything around our process or career questions. We're loving all the questions you guys have been sending in. So with that, we had a couple of questions that we got in the chat yesterday that we weren't able to get to. And so again, we just want to start off with answering some of those. And so one of them was sort of around process. Do you start on paper or directly in XD? So Jeannie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I thought Martin's question was really useful to think about because we're always talking about, should we have artifacts in real life? Like a lot of companies will actually, or designers will actually print out all of their comps onto big sheets of paper for review. That's actually how they prefer to do critique. So paper versus just on the web is something that we talk about a lot in our industry. I personally tend to start just in XD, and this is for a couple of reasons. The first being that I'm just not good at sketching. So I kind of know my own limitations, and I tend to kind of design in XD. I find it pretty quick and easy to do that. But even when we were using Photoshop before XD existed, I always did it like that. I just kind of went directly into the program and tried to design. And we've talked about this over the past 3 days, how I design a high fidelity, and that just tends to be a habit of mine. That's
interesting. Yeah, and I think knowing your limitations is a great point. I definitely depends for me. I think sometimes I'm in a room with other people, so it is great to be able to visualize sometimes really quickly, and whether that tool for you is going straight into XD and creating some low fidelity mocks, or like grabbing a pen and writing on the whiteboard. It sort of depends. So for me it does vary.
Yeah.
Cool. And then another question we had in was around working with developers. So do you know what design can be made by your developers? How is your relationship with your developers?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about this yesterday too. And I cannot overemphasize how important it is for your relationship with other people on your team to be a major part of your workflow, right? A lot of people think that relationship and this kind of soft skills and interpersonal skills, they're secondary, right? It's first about craft and about execution. But I would say that your craft is pointless if you can't communicate it effectively and appropriately to the people who are going to help you build it, right? Like you could design the best website, and if you're a jerk and people can't understand what you're saying because you're just so difficult and you really argue and you're stubborn the entire time, eventually it's going to wear on them, and there's going to be a breakdown in communication. So part of being a designer is also maximizing your ability to communicate. And if that means that you have to care about other people, which you should, it's definitely like something you should work on and improve on over time. And so with my developers, I try to always keep that in mind, right? You know, I really love the developers at Behance. I find that they are an incredible group of people. I've never worked with such talented and passionate people in my life. And we do a lot of work that isn't related to work to make sure that we can do our work. Does that make sense? Like, we spend time like asking about each other's lives and like interfacing with each other face to face. I think that's important and critical. And then when we actually get down in a meeting, when we actually get down to like, hey, there's a problem, there's a bug, we don't know what's happening, like, can we fix it together? It's a much more natural conversation. It's not just like so formal and rigid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we talked a little bit about the XD feature with the Redline beta yesterday, but I do want to show it off again really quickly because that is a little bit of Adobe XD, the product, trying to start to look at what it means to have that handoff between design and engineering. And so yeah, Jeannie's sort of going in, and if you create a, here we go, published design spec, she's gonna go ahead and update that link. But what it's going to do is XD will automatically create different specs for you. So redline the document for you. It has specificity around different attributes to the colors that you're using and the sizing. It also keeps all the connections. So you'll see this first view, if you go back really quickly, yeah, it shows like where it connects, where your file, where you have all those links. And then once you go in, you can click and you can see all of the different redline specs. And on the right-hand side, you'll see in that panel will change contextually to what you are selecting. And you can change, you know, the hex to RGB if you're more interested in those numbers for the color. And so this is just like a really quick an easy way to hand off. And this is in beta, so still being worked on by the XD team, but it's a great start.
Yeah, and I think in regards to like understanding constraints with development, the key really here is that there are few UI UX solutions currently in the world, like problems in the world that need an entirely novel solution. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you work for, you know, most sites and most places that you're gonna work at, they don't require you to reinvent the wheel. And so a lot of people try like really, really hard to come up with brand new ways to animate and brand new ways to like have a button kind of render. And that doesn't really make sense for your problem necessarily. And so because of the way that Behance works, like Behance doesn't need to be a site that has buttons that no one's ever seen before. Like my buttons can just be buttons, my drop downs can just be drop downs. And so I'm always pretty aware of like what the constraints, like the technical constraints are. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and Claudia on the chat is saying always empathize to your users and your developers.
Yep.
Yeah. Great. So our last question, I think this is our last question that we wanted to talk about was...
I have one more.
We have one more, okay. That came up around feedback and critique. How do you judge feedback? Like 10 people giving you 10 different opinions. Can you suggest any forums to share your work for feedback?
Yeah. So I think this question comes up if in the beginning, before you've done the design, like as you're refining and defining the problem, that has not been solved appropriately. When you don't really know what you're trying to solve for and no one on your team has like shared consensus about what that means, when you're done with design, you're gonna get there and then be like, everyone's gonna be like, I'm not sure I like this, right? As opposed to, does it solve the problem? Mm-hmm. And I think that's like the key, is to be like, how can we bring that to like a shared consensus about what is this problem? And then as a designer, you can talk about the solutions and talk about how you've approached it, and you can show lots of different options and, you know, give background to that. So I think that's one thing. And then the other thing is, if it's, let's say the feedback is not like product specific, it's not like what should we build, it's something along the lines of like, oh, like one person's like the font's too small and the other person's like the font's too big, right? It's kind of more UI, like visual stuff. I think that's mostly about, one is like you should be able to explain and justify your decision making, and that gets easier with experience, right? So something like, oh, the font is too big. You're like, oh, actually we did some user testing and legibility was a really big issue in our first iteration, so we're actually trying to push this one. Or You know, the color is not, I don't know, a common critique is like, make it pop, right? And I don't see it enough. And you can kind of be like, okay, well, we tried all these options and this is the one that like made the most sense with our branding, and you can kind of like justify it.
Yeah. And I also think with feedback, it's important to tell people what type of feedback you're really looking to get, and like being clear about that up front. And so if there's certain things you don't want people to focus on, so say like people can get really caught up on the font or the visual, and maybe that's not what you're looking for feedback on. Being really clear up front, like, hey, we're not focusing on looking for feedback around the specific visuals, but you know, we want sort of a step back at the larger concept or whatever it is. But being clear and setting that ground for what you want people to give you feedback on can also help lead the discussion clearly from the beginning. Right,
exactly. Yeah. And then for forums, obviously, I am a big proponent of Behance. You know, I use
Really?
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
What a shock.
Yeah.
And I use
No, Behance is great for that. Yeah.
I use Dribble too, and people get so like weird about it around me, but I'm like, I use both. It's not a big deal. But the key really is that on any online platform, it's hard to get the kind of feedback that you need. Again, because you're trying to drive a decision, like you're trying to guide the conversation, and that's always going to be hard with people who you're not talking to either directly or face to face. And so I will put my work there, but not so much to get feedback, just to kind of be able to show my work and like get my name out there. And really with feedback and critique, you don't even need someone who's good at art and design to come and give you feedback. Really, anyone who is, especially if you're doing a consumer-facing app or consumer-facing like website, you can just show it to like your mom, like, I don't know, people you know, like people around the office. I show it to people in the office all the time, and they're not designers, but that's great. Yeah. My developers give some of my best design feedback. They're like, oh, I looked at it and it looked confusing. And just that by itself, not useful.
Yeah.
It's really just going back to it and being like, okay, well, what do you mean by confusing? Like, and they'll be like, oh, well, I didn't know what this would do.
Yeah, asking those clarifying questions
exactly.
can sometimes be really great. Yeah, and we have in the chat, Min was saying, being able to explain your designs is something I wish they taught more of in school. And yeah, I think it's really important, like learning to how to correctly talk about your design is really important to get the right feedback as well. Like knowing who you're talking to, whether you're talking to an engineer, maybe you're talking more to a stakeholder, someone who doesn't know as much about design, or you're talking to a designer, right? Your feedback or the way you talk about the design is going to change as well. And yeah, Paul on the chat was saying relevant feedback at the right time.
Yeah. And I would say that, you know, for people who struggle with getting the right kind of feedback, right, it's not on the other person to give you the right kind of feedback. They can't read your mind. It's about you being able to guide the conversation. And so really any books about managing up, right, like managing your manager, or like kind of helping them understand where your career is going, that's kind of the same conversations that you're doing, where you're like really trying to guide people along your thinking and to give specific kind of feedback for what you're doing. So those are the kind of things that I would think about as you're receiving feedback, that no one owes you great critique, right? I mean, maybe your boss like should give you great critique, but like nobody owes you the perfect answer. Like even if you polled 100,000 people and they all tried their best, right? And they could still be wrong. Like the numbers could technically not work out. And so part of it is just you have to accept that and kind of learn how to tease it out of people. So
cool. Yeah, and then I think we have one other question we wanted to take a look at, which was around learning XD. So I'm new with XD. I already use other Adobe products. What project should I start with to learn and get a good experience?
Yeah, and I thought this was good to kind of talk about like initial projects, because even on Photoshop, if you open Photoshop, it's not immediately apparent how you should start learning it. The best way I think you should learn XD is actually via practicing daily. And I know that really sucks and it sounds really tedious, but the key is, I actually used to have this site I quite liked called Daily UI. I don't know if they still do this. Yeah, they every day they prompt you a different prompt. And they're like, oh, can you try to design a login pop-up? And can you try to design a calculator? And they're not things that you're going to be able to put in your portfolio. Like I wouldn't consider that like a fleshed out design project, but it's really useful to be able to say like, I want to try designing, here I'll show you, on Dribble. And Dribble is like kind of like where I've done this before. Because because again, I don't consider these like really fleshed out design projects. So this is really old. This is 2015. But I was just kind of practicing like what it would mean for me to make a credit card thing that looked kind of credit cardy, right? I don't really get to use this kind of gradient at Behance. We don't have this kind of very bright, intense flow. We don't have a checkout flow, so I wouldn't get to practice it. So I was like, oh, that's kind of useful. And every day, Daily UI sends you like a prompt, and you can kind of just make something. So I thought that would be really useful for if you're trying a new XD project. And the key is to not kill yourself doing it, right? A lot of times it's kind of like losing weight or like learning to exercise. If you just quit on day 2 because you missed one of the days, you're never gonna get there. The key is to like constantly like, you know, pick yourself up. I missed a day, and that's fine, right? I was sick, I wasn't feeling well. It's fine, let it go, and do the next days. Let's go.
Yeah, I think, you know, giving yourself a challenge, like whether it's, you know, using this for figuring out a daily challenge of smaller tasks, also just giving yourself like your own like project of something you really want to do, like, hey, I want to try and design, you know, a mobile app, and just sort of starting with a couple screens and trying to work from there. And then once you get a little bit more proficient in the tool and you feel more comfortable working on some of those like sort of passion projects is really helpful for also having a portfolio of work for the type of things that you want to get work for, because whatever you show on your portfolio is really going to be the type of work that people reach out to you for, for what you're going to be doing.
Right.
So great. So I think before we're going to hop into Adobe XD, and Jeannie's going to continue and sort of give us a rundown of where we ended up from the past 2 days of designing.
Great.
Yeah.
So past 2 days I've been designing. Actually, I'm going to show you not in the preview screen. I'll just show you real up close. I've been designing, kind of trying to solve the problem of how can I find a florist really quickly. And so all the images, in case you haven't been tuning in, the images are images that I work on in my own spare time. I'm a florist on the side. I do floral art, as if that you could call it that, floral photography. And I usually just make wearable floral pieces, and I collaborate with other photographers and models, and then we make these. So the images are from me. And then I'm actually going ahead and taking the this idea that we should be able to quickly sign a contract with a florist or begin a conversation like in one go, and that onboarding sort of beginning the conversate flow is really useful here. So here all we have is a really simple UI. It says it gives you find a florist, so the kind of value prop here is right in front of you, near your location with the perfect style. And near your location and the perfect style are obviously 2 different parameters. It would change kind of what you would see below on the page. And if you hovered over one, you would be able to get this little, our main color.
And Milo on the chat's curious, what is the type being used? And he was curious for if you could click on the headline.
Yeah. So this one is Freight Display Pro, and then the small one is Avenir, and both of them are available on Typekit. Awesome. Which I thought was kind of useful.
Yeah, check out Typekit if you're looking for some cool fonts. They're all available and really easy then to sync into all of our CC products.
Exactly. Clicking this would give you a open panel, and you can select your location like so. And then it would auto update here, so it would say found a florist near California with the perfect style. And then the perfect style, because it's the second parameter, style is the second parameter, we would also be able to select the styles you love and show it here. And then the content below it would change because you had changed the kind of style. And the, what's it called? This is a tablet version that I quickly mocked up, but we're going to hopefully do a couple of responsive versions later.
Yeah.
And then also at the end of yesterday, we talked about putting in a loading state, like kind of what would happen when the page is, as the page is loaded or refreshed, or if I clicked on something. So I have this little bar going across the top, and the page might have a nice little white overlay. So that was day 1. And then day 2, we had gone ahead and we made a profile for people. So if you were to select, it's kind of going back and forth here. If you were to select one of the cards up here, where should I go? I should go to the florist profile, and I would see their stuff here with a nice, beautiful image. I would have some sort of like, you know, we talked about contextually stringing people along when they go from one part of the flow to the next. Yep. So the last flow we talked about their style and their location, and so when they land on this page, we should still continue talking about their style and location just to like understand like, why am I here? how did I get here?
Yeah, and you have this all hooked up, right? So in like the prototype mode, if you click at the very top up there, you see that Jeannie has some of those, some of the links already hooked up for the prototype. So when you click on certain section, it'll jump to a different screen.
Yep. So here, on the right side, we have a little bit of sign up, not sign up, but kind of getting started immediately. We're going to collect their email from the get-go so that we can contact them later and be like, hey, did you forget to sign up? Because we're going to do a sign up flow after this. I like to collect a little bit of information prior. I feel like it makes people more invested and they understand why they're signing up. And then an event type. And then it allows us, if the florist is online, we actually give you a little indicator dot that says online now, and you can start the chat right now. We put in a couple of hover states. We talked yesterday about how micro interactions and the interim states are really important for design. So things like error states when you don't put in a valid email. And then we also talked about putting in null states. In other words, what happens if a floral studio doesn't have any images or they don't have any descriptions? What should we do? And so we've kind of designed these like empty state here. And then lastly, we decided that once you hit Start Chat Now on the profile page, we should be able to give you a pop-up and immediately kind of push you towards the onboarding flow. Like, we already have your email, we know where your wedding is, I put, your event is, I put wedding. And then here, you can kind of see, like, I've contextually, again, like, try to string people from screen to screen. So here, this image is the florist profile image because that's who I want to chat with.
Yep.
It tells me why I'm here. It says sign up to chat with that floral studio's name. I can create an account with my email address, which I had already asked them for prior in the previous screen. And then all it takes is first name, last name, and you make a password. And here's a little checkbox for I agree to their terms and services, and you can create my account.
Awesome, yeah. And so you've done so much already in the past 2 days, but I think this is great, a great summary too for those of you who are just joining us or haven't seen the past 2 days with us. And so I think moving forward, we're going to keep designing that out, but I also want to make sure before we have Jeannie continue with her designs, I do want to mention that we have a daily challenge going on. And so there is a challenge tab in the Behance chat that you can click on to get more information. But our theme for today is a UI kit that is transportation UI kit, Navigo. And so, yes, I have up, there's this blog, and I know it was shared, a link was shared in the chat, and we can send this around again. But there are free UI kits that Adobe hired 5 great designers to create using Adobe XD. And previously we had people designing in the smartwatch UI kit, and we had what was yesterday's?
It was like a chart background, like a CMS.
I'm already forgetting. Yes, but today we have the Navigo Transportation UI kit. And so I have this up here. We can take a look. Navigo UI kit. So when you open up the XD file, you're going to see all of this great UI elements already designed here for you to start to get a look at, and you can design at least 3 screens and have them click through and linked in and submit that to us to win the contest. And if you win, Jeannie and I will be picking a winner at the end of our stream, and you will win a 1-year subscription to the Creative Cloud, which is amazing. So make sure that you are working on those while Jeannie is also working on her designs, and submit those on in. And we will be taking a look at them throughout the chat so you can sort of see what's going on. But yeah, this is a great one. Again, like all the other UI kits, it's already hooked up as well, which is awesome. So you can press the play button and right away start to click through, and it has, you know, these transitions in, and I can click on Sushi Place, maybe go there. It's really nicely designed, and it's a great starting place. So try and make this as unique as possible. I think Jeannie and I at the end are going to be looking to see, you know, how did you really make it your own? So at least 3 screens. You can do more. It's a lot about just sort of making it your own and adding some unique touches. So we're excited to take a look at whatever you guys are submitting today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here I am. I'm just trying to think about some interim screens here, and we talked about how the difference between a good designer and a great designer is really thinking about the immediate screens, like the screens between the big, beautiful screens, those little states, little interactions, that micro interactions you're going to kind of see. And so one thing I thought would be nice for an onboarding page or a pop-up is really giving you like check marks as you go. You can kind of imagine them animating as you like fill out each form field, and it kind of gives you the sense of validation. I don't like it when you have to push a button to fail validation. In other words, like you didn't do something or you didn't do it the right way, like a password, and then they don't tell you until you push a button, and then the whole form clears out, and then that really sucks. So here I have, I like put in some validation here. Oh no, there you go. I'm gonna just go ahead and take this and fill out my fake password with some dots. And you can see that each of, I'm a little frozen here. Each of these screens, each of these form fields has its own little checkmark validation on the outside. And the reason it's on the outside is because I've been thinking about what happens if I do have a drop down, because I probably want to use this sort of validation elsewhere in the pages. So just like a little bit of thinking there. And then here you can see that I like checked off and agreed to terms and services. So all I'm doing is just showing what it would look like if you were to fill it out from this page to this page. Pretty straightforward. Yeah. And then the next step would be, what should happen after you create an account? Well, right before that, we had talked about starting a conversation or starting a chat, right? So we should just directly drop that person into the chat. So we'll go ahead and do that here. So we'll delete the pop-up that we have before over it. Oh, nope. That's everything. These check marks are so tiny. There you go. I'll delete my pop-up. I'm going to delete this overlay. So I should land kind of in this page, but with a chat feature instead of like this chat now. I already know you want to chat now. That's how you got to the onboarding page. So I can go ahead and just delete this little, I'm going to ungroup this. Delete this little thing. And then what might be nice is if all of this, these little tags, the header for this person, kind of all moved up. Right? I don't really need everything to be so like in your face, like that image that we saw like as a selling page. It's just, it doesn't need to be there all the time. So we'll go ahead and just make that a little bit smaller. And maybe this will just be kind of a different sort of page and interface than the one before. So we'll place it here. And now that you're logged in, I should also think about the nav, right? So the nav here doesn't need to be sign in and start now because that isn't true anymore. You're already signed in and you're already kind of starting your way along your way. So instead I can go ahead and delete this button. I've turned on my grid here, and again, this is Shift Command apostrophe to turn on my grid, a 12 column grid, help me align some of the objects. So here I'm going to make this my name. To indicate that there's some sort of like profile thought process here. And I'll just put a little triangle to indicate that there's probably some sort of settings drop down that I can point people to later if they need to change their account or change their email. We're not going to worry about that page quite yet. We're just going to figure out the navigation together. Great. So that's... And then maybe since we're in this chat, right, we're starting a chat with Lambert, my floral, the person that I'm trying to talk to. Maybe we should have a page to kind of talk about, here, we'll give it some padding. And maybe we should have a page where it says see all your chats, see your chats. So maybe I can chat with a bunch of people. And then right now I'm only chatting with this one guy, but that's totally fine. I'll see the entire list. So I'll turn off the grid so we can look at this. So this is what I have so far. So this is my logged in state. I've already clicked create my account. I land on a page and I should be able to chat directly with this person. So let's see what we can do. For chat things, I've kind of been looking around. I was thinking about this all night when I was like, oh, what should I design? I'm going to design a little chat program here. I tend to like it when the chat is not so wide. If you think about the way that we typically do chat or like phone messages, it's really in a short width, right? It's hard to read when you have messages that are like bouncing back and forth, like all the way left, all the way right, all the way left, all the way right, etc. So we're gonna go ahead and just maybe make this, I can delete these tags actually. I'm gonna make this a little bit shorter, make it quite a bit shorter. Shorter in width specifically.
Have you had to design chat systems before previously?
Yeah, I designed, when I was really first starting in the Behance team, I designed the chat system for Behance, the inbox. I probably, if I could do it again, I would redo it. But
why is that?
I think at the time I didn't understand. I was pretty young as a designer. I was like maybe junior, mid-level designer, and I was trying to figure out like a lot of those tiny little interactions that come with the chat, like they're hard to flesh out as by yourself. And I didn't quite understand that. And now I totally understand why Messenger on Facebook's Messenger is like an entire team onto itself. It's a big thing. It's making people feel like their messages are sending securely is a big process. Yep. So I'm gonna go ahead and just drag this person's image in. We can make it smaller, but I just wanna keep his image relevant so that you kind of know like, okay, like I'm talking to a specific person here. Maybe we'll make this. And we'll bring this over. We don't need some of these details, so that's fine. And we'll change this so that we're saying, we're pretty clear about where you are. You're chatting with Lambert Floral Studio. Pretty straightforward. And then we talked a little about giving an online indicator that people are currently online, so we'll drag that over. Like I said, keeping contextual clues between screens is really important. So you can kind of see here you're chatting with Lambert.
Nice, yeah, and in the chat we're talking about sort of, it looks like, you know, has anyone else used XD to design a web experience? And it looks like Matthias has, Miriam has, Akash. Have any of you guys done, you know, a chat system? I know we're working on that now, so I'd be curious to hear if you guys have designed any chat systems or what you found challenging about that, or, you know, any key tips that you would have for us.
So here, I'm gonna go ahead, and before I even design the chat state, I'm gonna think about an empty state for this, because you're gonna land here, you haven't started chatting. I need you to kind of begin. So I'll just kind of put down a text box at the bottom here, kind of like, I'm referring a lot to Messenger because I feel like that's a very common like paradigm for how people chat nowadays, especially with businesses on Facebook. So we'll just go ahead and we'll make this keep this little chat box at the bottom here. We'll make the drop shadow a little less severe because it doesn't need to be so intense. Actually, we can completely take out the
Cool, yeah, and it doesn't look like too many people have designed a chat system, but Aaron did mention using XD to redesign my company's onboarding process. So, yeah, I think like we didn't have a huge onboarding piece in this, but be curious to know what type of onboarding process, how that worked out for you.
So I'm going ahead and I'm actually dropping in this graphic from what we had before for our user empty state. So this is my user, if you had no user profile, what it would look like. I'm just going to modify it. Maybe this little icon will just become like a consistent pattern for when you see things that they're not as obviously like they're just like null states or empty states. So we'll just go ahead and make this little gray. And we'll actually make these two a little lighter too, these two lines. They're quite heavy. So.
Yeah, and I don't think, I personally haven't made a chat piece before. I've worked on sort of little mini experimental pieces. So like, as I've mentioned before, I work more on a team. I don't work on I work at Adobe on a team that is not tied to any specific product team here at Adobe, but looks more at like what's the future of the experiences for Adobe, and so anything sort of 1-3 years out, and what does that mean? And so I think last time I was on the stream with Talon Wadsworth, who is the lead designer for Adobe XD, we were looking at like what would it mean if we had like commenting more thoroughly throughout the product of Adobe XD. And so we did mock some low fidelity designs of what that would look like. So commenting, not quite chat UI, but somewhat similar. So curious if you guys have designed anything similar in those regards, or if you have any questions for Jeannie and I, send them on in through the chat. And make sure that you're staying active, because later we will be giving away these Adobe XD socks, so make sure that you're being active in the chat.
So yeah, I love doing things like this. I love thinking about like, why are we, like, what is the kind of placeholder text here, because I feel like stuff like that is really useful for helping people understand the context that they're in. I always talk about context. I just really love context. And even things like knowing that the chat cursor is like lit up, is the cursor is already there, it's blinking, things like that help people like understand that you're gonna be chatting here. Yep. And then my empty state also indicates that nothing here yet, right? There's no chat here. Start your chat below.
Nice.
So we'll give it a quick save. Always be saving. ABS. Always be saving. And then I'll put a little send button here, because I know that's going to be something that comes up. Right. And then what I also like to do is, maybe this won't be so obvious to someone who's new what I'm trying to make them do. Like, I want them to kind of be aware of like what the purpose of this page is. So I'm actually gonna give them a little pop-up, and I like doing this too. I like to take a square and then a second square. Well, one's a rectangle, one's a square. I turn a little square 45 degrees.
And so we have a question in the chat. Joanna's saying, I'm working on my portfolio as I listen to the stream. How do you guys go about showing wireframes in an interesting and innovative way? Or informative way? Whew, reading today.
So I don't show wireframes. That's actually the way I do it. I think it's really important to show people high fidelity mocks. I talk about that a lot. And really just the key is to continually be trying to show people as close to something that they can wrap their head around, right? If it's just wireframes, it can be really hard for people to be like, so what is it really gonna look like? And then they agonize over that. I think most people are not trained in design critique in that way. So I try not to do too much of showing wireframes. When I do show my work, I try to show it on a screen that is at the resolution. Like for example, if you put it on a big screen, it can be tough. So I love having people come over to my desk. Hey, can you come here and just look at it.
Yeah, Mila in the chat was saying, never show a client a wireframe. I think there are certain times where you have no choice, but you have to have a wireframe. And if you do, I'd say it's really important to make sure that you have, you're telling a story and you're really making sure that that full experience is there. But I agree, it's really hard for people to visualize what it's going to be like. And so the closer you can kind of fake it to the real experience of what it's going to be, the easier it is for people to grasp that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a time and place for wireframes. And I'm also speaking a little bit out of my own experience as an in-house designer. And so I want people to keep that in mind. It's like, inevitably someone will be like, my agency does, and you're like, yeah, totally valid. I'm sure they have a great process. I just happen to work for an in-house design team, so I can ask people to come over, and I don't do wireframes. But it's like, it's just different for my specific team. If that makes any sense. I find that with design, people try to be very prescriptive. They want to know, like, it's as if you could, if you could crack the code for the exact perfect way to show a wireframe or show a comp or deliver something, then you would have a perfect product. And I find that designing for, especially product design, it doesn't really work that way. I like to say be tool agnostic. I saw in the chat earlier, a lot of people were arguing about Behance versus Dribble on Behance, which is kind of weird. But I think the key is to be tool agnostic, process centric, In other words, like you think a lot about your process and how to improve it. You don't worry too much about your tools, like why should I use X versus Y and argue about that. I think just pick whatever works for you. I like XD, so I use XD. And then really above all, be people focused, right? It's about people at the end of the day. Like we're designing websites for people, we're making it with people. And so if you spend all your time arguing about the tool, you miss out on the hard work and the interesting work of working with people. So that's why I don't really do the Dribble Behance debate. I don't really do that kind of tool debate. I just don't find it useful. All right, so here I'm gonna actually give you a little bit of prompt. And I love to give people this, right? As they're working, I just kind of show them like, as they're like going through my flow, I kind of show them like little prompts to help them along the way. I don't like tours, you know, the ones where they're like, step 1 of 7, select this. I think those can be kind of intense and hard to get out of. And I think this is a great way to kind of show, like give people like a nice little tooltip, and then if they ignore it, it just fades away. Like you can like set a timer for it and just like make it go away. So here I'm gonna say like popular ways to start a chat. And this is great, right? Because people really want you to validate like, am I talking to the florist the right way? Am I talking to this particular demographic the right way? How do I even begin talking about it? And so here I'm gonna just go ahead and write it for them. I love your work. Are you free on this specific date?
Yes, and I know in the chat we're having a lot more conversation. People, thank you for engaging, but a lot of people are really talking about these wireframes, and Mila's saying, you know, I doodle the wireframes, that's why I never show them. They're awful. Oh no. But because it's a wireframe, and you said that later, it's a concept. And so yeah, there's sort of like these different levels of like why we're creating these wireframes. And I do want to show like a past piece when Tal and I were on the stream previously to sort of talk about these wireframes. Tal and I were looking at, you know, what would we do with Adobe XD if, you know, we could rethink sort of like artboards, and what would that look like? And so we did these rough wireframes. So up on my screen I have a mock of what we did last time, and so this is really rough, and again, sort of that conversation around wireframes and what this looks like. But we were sort of looking at, okay, if you have these little nodes, and this was Project Evolution was the name that the chat helped us come up with, so if you're with us for that, you might recognize this project. And then if you click the plus button, it sort of copies it over and brings you to the next board, and it was all about sort of talking about this story of what happens, and you could sort of branch off these ideas if you have this moment of, oh, like maybe I should go in a different direction, what would that look like? And that you would get another artboard there, and you can sort of flesh this idea out here, or collapse different nodes and continue concepts, but keep that stream of thought so you never lost like a good idea. Yeah, Tim in the chat, hee, great name by the way. I feel like maybe you named that project, I don't know, in the chat. But you can reopen them up. And so there was like this low fidelity that was just, okay, we're trying to come up with this concept, and just to have that conversation with other people who are interested in it. But then there's also, later in these flows, you know, we talked about like dragging in images and populating that out, maybe sourcing all of the colors and being able to automatically have a color little strip on the side based off of all of the images that you have. And then being able to use that to drag in, so having these buckets of sort of like inspiration and stuff. And so this is much lower fidelity. We jumped a bit in our workflow based off time to some higher fidelity, so now you see like an actual example in here. And so I think like there's different purposes for what these are, of, you know, maybe there's just other people at the table who you just want to share like really rough idea with, in which case wireframe, like it just might help to just help everyone get on the same page. But I agree, like I wouldn't go necessarily to the rest of my team and be like, I have this idea, here's the idea. I would definitely flesh it out more and do the higher fidelity to get there.
Yep.
Yeah. And so for those of you who are also interested in, a lot of you in the chat have been asking about some features and things for Adobe XD. I do want to again mention Adobe User Voice. We have adobe xd.uservoice.com, And you can, if you have some of these features that you're wanting to see in XD, go there and check out what other people have been requesting for us to put in, and you'll see what's currently being worked on and what isn't, and what's sort of like in our backlog. And then you can vote certain items up, and we do look at that for prioritization of like what's coming next in the product.
Yeah, for sure. I think the XD team is particularly aware of how users are using their product, so it's something that I really admire about that product team.
Yeah, Burn Tone saying, I wish XD could keep some layouts from AI and PSD. Yeah, I mean, add these into user voice if there's things that you want to see. I know someone earlier mentioned when you were talking about saving your files all the time, people were talking about some auto-saving that they'd like to have. I'm sure, you know, if you have a request that you're thinking you'd really like for the product, most likely someone else wants it as well. We'll see. I don't know, maybe no one wants it. But most likely, I mean, we have some in here that you can also, you know, mark bugs. We're always looking for feedback on the product. But 5.0 just released for Adobe XD, so check it out. There's been some great new features added.
Yep. All right, so...
Yeah, Paul, sorry, one last thing. Paul in the chat was wondering how long left for the challenge. And so for the giveaway, for the socks, make sure you're active in the chat, and in 13 minutes we'll be giving away the socks, and then the challenge, you have 45 minutes left to submit. So in the challenge tab of the chat you can find more information around the Navigo transportation UI kit for the challenge today.
Yep. And then we also have something extra for people who complete
the challenge.
Yes, we
have extra stuff today.
An unusual option. So I work at Behance, and Behance, one of the teams that works with us is 99U. They create this beautiful creative magazine. It comes out quarterly, and you know, it's so pretty. This one is specifically for XD. You can kind of see that it's the guy on the front is Ian Spalter, I believe, who is the head of design at Instagram. Maybe I'm not saying it right, but anyway, it's like super beautiful. It's designed by, it is Ian Spalter. Good, I did it right. But it's designed by one of the best designers on our team, Mark Brooks, who does a phenomenal job. There's like little inserts of like just beautiful color. Oh, that one's green, so you really can't see anything.
Oh my god,
I love it.
I'm on now, headless. We really wanted to do that.
This is amazing.
Too much fun.
Anyway, you can really see that.
Sidetrack.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and it's something that I think every designer should get the chance to read through. This one is specific to XD. We've never done this before, but an edition that talks about, you know, how people talk about interface and experience design. Nice. So the challenge winner will get a copy of this.
Super cool. Yeah, and we took a look at, I don't know if you want to pull up the Behance page as well, because we did talk about this magazine a bit yesterday as well, and people were sort of curious around, you know, what makes a good portfolio in Behance. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that as well. And we took a look at the portfolio, Mark Brooks' portfolio.
Yeah. So I think Mark is just really one of the best designers, and you can kind of see this is like a display of how he would currently be showing his work. There's not just flat lays, there's also like really interesting side things. I love this one in particular. This is when he designed the entire branding and identity for our 99U conference, and you can see it's just like super beautiful.
That's cool. I have that bag.
Yeah.
I have that tote bag.
Yeah, so they're like
the colorful neon one, yes, from last year's conference. Very cool.
And then my favorite part of this was that he told us that he made this beautiful little graphic. If I can scroll to it, do you see this? It like shimmies a little bit, and it shows you that there's a beautiful gloss on the front of where the text is. And this was actually made by suspending the page with like a little bit of Scotch tape. So he's like Scotch tape suspended, and then he like edits that out. So it's just really pretty. But I thought this was a great way to kind of talk about how to showcase work. It's lots of different angles, lots of close-ups and far away, and just showing like, you know, what makes it beautiful. So yeah.
Awesome. People in the chat, someone had a similar thought to us. Jim says, is that a Harry Potter book? We were joking that when on the first day's stream, if you missed it, Jeannie brought some flowers in, but they're green, and so they became invisible. And we joked that we would come in with cloaks, like the invisibility cloak from Harry Potter?
Actually, I spent the entire week trying to convince people that I should come in a green turtleneck. So you would just I would show up in design. And
I mean,
it would just be my face.
So close. We were so close to having that happen today.
Yeah.
Oh no, this one.
No,
it does. Oh, it does.
It does.
Okay.
It does work.
I thought it looked too white. You guys should bring in more green stuff to make us invisible. Just silent laughter in the background.
All right, so here we have the chat page. We're nearing our 45-minute mark here. Well, I've been designing for a little bit over maybe 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah, and where we are right now, send us in any questions you have for Jeannie and I. We have 9 minutes until the giveaway, and so be active in the chat. And then I think send us, a question around, if you have a question for Jeannie around her process or working at Behance, what that's like, something specific to Adobe XD or what she's designing right now, her floral designs. Send those questions in right now and get active before we pick our winner for today.
Yeah. I feel like Kaylee always has really great questions. I've noticed Kaylee in the chat. You're awesome.
How long have you been using XD for? How long did it take you to get the hang of it? Great question.
Yeah, and so I've been using XD for about a year now. I started a little bit when it was just out in the beta and fiddling it with it on and off. And then my entire design team has really committed to it. And I think that helps me get the hang of it is just committing and just doing it day in and day out. I understand if you're trying new products, I think I was trying something the other day. I can't remember which one it was. Maybe Figma. I just tried it out and I couldn't get the hang of it, but that's not Figma's fault. That just straight up was I did it for 30 minutes and then I put it down because I had to go back to do work. And if you're trying new software, I think the key is to really go in and commit some time to it.
Yeah, we have some great questions coming in. I'm going to keep reading these out while you're doing this. Stephanie's wondering, what is your process like around defining style elements and visual look and feel before starting to work on mock-ups?
I think that tends to be less of my work because I work again in-house, and so that stuff has oftentimes been prescribed beforehand. For a page like this, I've already gone ahead and done some of the pre-work before we even showed up here. I think a lot of people associate this kind of work with UI UX, but for me, it is critical. If you don't have great search form fields and drop downs, it's going to be hard to do your work. But I think, part of it is just my team, we've already done a lot of that work prior. We did a rebrand recently, and we just kind of thought about all this stuff and sat down and really hammered it out. And really for us, it's about legibility and giving people easy ways to access. We don't do thin little form fields that are just one stroke, one line. So
nice, yeah. And another good question that I'm curious as well now is Gelsa Designs, how difficult was your interview process at Adobe?
It was a really long time ago. It's hard. I think all interviews are hard. It's hard not to tie your worth to your work. And interviews inherently are about tying worth to your work. And so I think the key is really that, it's about showing your work and the process behind it, and really being able to explain why you chose certain solutions.
Yeah, and I know when I first interviewed, so I actually started at Adobe as an intern for 6 months. I was an intern here at Adobe for 6 months, and so I was doing I went to Northeastern, which had a co-op program where you basically alternate between 6 months of school and 6 months of work. And so it gave me a lot of good experience at trying to figure out, for me, I wasn't sure, do I want to be more in the visual design and UX design and UI design, and I didn't really know what type of design I was really interested in, so I was really testing everything out. And then I came to Adobe and interviewed here, and then did some work for 6 months, and then just ended up staying on sort of full time. And so I've seen the XD product back when it was just that repeat grid interaction before they really knew sort of what XD was going to be. But yeah, and then we had another question for you, Jeannie, around how big is your design team?
My team is 6. So we have
6 people for the Behance team?
Yeah, well, 3 people for the Behance team. So we're really small. We only have 3 people. It's me, 2 other product. Oh, four, because we have a guy who works exclusively on mobile, and that guy is really good. He does all of the iPhone and Android design, so we don't actually split that out. It's the same person designing for both. We have 4 people, and then 3 of us are web designers. And then the 6th part comes in because there's other 2 people who sit with us and are designers, but they don't work on Behance. They work on other Adobe products, one of whom is 99U, so he designed this, and then one of whom designs for Adobe Portfolio, which is how you can make websites.
Awesome. Yeah, these are great questions, you guys. Keep them coming in, and we're gonna pick our winner soon from the chat of those of you being active. Another great question from Joanna is, who or what inspires you?
That's a good one. I used to have a lot of design heroes. Not that
Used to. What happened? Now I don't.
Yeah.
No, it's no longer happening.
I think the importance of finding inspiration outside of our industry it's critical. It's really critical. You really got to like look not just at our industry. Learn from composers, learn from athletes, learn from politicians, learn from artists who are working other mediums, and those are the people that really inspire me. I like to go, and that's why I do floral work. I don't go home and do web design. I find that like very difficult to kind of always be doing web design. I know some people, they can do that, but for me, I think it's actually really great as a designer to be able to bounce off doing different things. I know you do a lot of hiking. You're like an avid hiker. I do florals.
I do love, I feel like nature is like, there's times and places to be on the screen all the time. And so there's a lot of inspiration I get from the screen, from like, using a bunch of apps, from seeing what other people are making, Behance, just scrolling through a bunch of people's work. But then there's also inspiration I get from like, just taking a breath and like being away from the screen and going on a hike, or beauty from like nature. You do the floral designs as well, and so there's a lot of that as well, that just, some of your best ideas can come to you when you're off, not thinking about it at all, and then it finally hits you. Sometimes, if you think about it too much, you're really forcing it, forcing the creativity. So these are great questions. I think we have another question for you from Karen. Jeannie, can you share some tips on how to create a better designer to developer handoff?
Yeah. So I think the number one way to do this, and I know this is not practical for everyone, is to sit next to them. Try to make a case with your boss about why that would be important, or dedicate some time to them, or eat lunch with them, anything. Really, just more FaceTime is always better. More relationship, like the more you work on that relationship with them, it's always going to be better. And 2, I think part of the handoff is like, these little interim states that I have, right? These little like empty states, and what it would look like if nothing, empty states or error states. I think that stuff is really important to just continue. Like, you have to think like a developer, right? You have to kind of think about like all the cases they're going to run into, not just for your users, but also for like your devs. And so having that like very good self-awareness for those, and providing that ahead of time, trying to do as much thinking as you can before is really useful.
Yeah, and I'm seeing in the chat some questions about like how you emulate hover states, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, but I mean, I know XD is working on sort of object states and what that means. Yesterday I had mentioned that I was going to do some user testing for XD in-house, and there's a lot going on. It's pretty exciting to see, and so they're definitely thinking about some of these things, as well as I know someone mentioned that they checked on Adobe User Voice and saw that some of your guys' requests that you're looking for are actually coming in, and their feature started on User Voice. So if you are looking for something, you might find that it's already being worked on or thought about from the XD team.
Yep. And I think for hover states, I also just sometimes will have cursors. Like here, you'll see like, here's a cursor, and I'll just put it there in case like maybe you hovered over this, you would see that. In this case, I'm gonna not even have that because I want it to be an automatic pop-up to kind of show up. And I also do interim states like this. So let's say I was trying to add a profile photo here. I would actually just be like, if I hit add now or the plus button, I would actually get my finder, right? Like in real life, that's what would happen. So I just went ahead and I screenshot my finder and I dropped it in. So I dropped it in, and then maybe now I will select my profile. And since I already added it, I can get rid of this. And I will, That is my zombie baby. That is so strange.
I was like, do I say something?
I was like, should I say something?
I don't know.
Should we talk about the zombie baby? Have I ever told you? The zombie baby
told me.
is...
I don't know. Is that the segue? I don't know what that segue
I like
into.
looked at it and I was like,
I'm a little
oh,
nervous.
it's here. It's here. It follows me. So this is a prank that they decorated.
I'm honestly going to have
Oh my god, it's literally the worst. It's like right in front of me. I like see.
We need the invisibility. Where's the invisibility cloak?
No, it's gonna. He shows up through it.
Oh, darn it.
The zombie baby is this awful thing that showed up at the Adobe offices 3 years ago for Halloween, and everyone at work found out that I hated it the most. So they started hiding it in places. So I would like show up and open my drawer, and it would be in there, and I would scream. And then
shoot.
It got so bad that one day I got a box. Oh god! They bought it! Oh god! They brought the actual zombie baby.
No, I'm sorry. Like, that's my exit. That's my cue. I can't. Like,
I have a hate love for him.
what is that?
Do you know how much this baby has been in my life? This baby has literally oh my god, my team is messaging me. I'm dying. This baby has shown up at work in a box. They shipped me one, and they masked it as a shipment to me at work. So I love my team. Thank you so much. This is really, truly the most.
I can't, like, it's scary. I
so
can't,
beautiful.
like, I don't want it to see what's happening. It's like, I'm literally speechless. This is like, this is my nightmare, you guys. You may never see me again. And this, oh.
I'm actually more surprised that the green screen doesn't rip out more of his green. You can kind of see he's like a little transparent here. But yeah, I have seen
It's not even Halloween. Like, I don't understand why this
They
is.
probably shipped this one to me. They probably shipped it to the live team, and we're like, you need to have it pull up in the middle of the live stream, and I'll be like, oh my god.
That's the real. Yeah. That's okay. Because I have many questions that are going to be asked post this stream. many questions.
Yeah, someone, I think Ab wrote, that's what I look like in the mornings, and I feel you. That is what I look like in the mornings also. I like how the first time we both looked at it and we were like, we'll just ignore that.
Like, when it first was starting to come up, I was like, so
should we talk about it?
I was like, I'm not saying anything first. I'm just gonna ignore it.
Someone wrote, I canceled my cable, so I just got my dose of The Walking Dead for the week. Yeah, my Behance team is the best and the worst, is what I'm here to tell you.
I can't take these, my heart can't take these types of surprises.
Bye, friends. My favorite really is that we both just completely were like, we'll act as if we didn't just see that happening. Until it was an actual problem.
So that's from your team?
That is from my team. They shipped it to me. I can tell.
Oh my god.
I actually can sense the exact people
I mean, you gotta, like someone said on the chat, you got, Aaron says it's good to have fun at work. Yeah. I'm still a little
Are you traumatized?
shaken up by this.
You can keep this one. I'm not bringing him back to New York.
I'm not keeping this anywhere near my desk. It's too scary.
I actually think this is
I have a zero tolerance for scary things.
For
I can't watch
zombies?
scary movies. No, for anything. I mean, I saw like Bambi the movie, and I no longer can watch scary movies, and that's like not even, that's a Disney movie.
That's not scary.
I have no tolerance. I can't do it.
So I'm just filling out a chat here. I'm not going too crazy. I'm just going to give you a couple of options and show you what this looks like. And I've also gone ahead and I really like this feature in XD where you can change the corners of the bubbles or like the rounded corners. Oh, yeah. So here I have something that is a box that I've actually placed 100 pixel radius and all the way around. And then here I actually can change it. If you see these two toggles on the top, up there, up there. Nope. There. Yeah, there. You can see like there are two different toggles. Yeah.
I can't reach all the way.
One is this where it goes all the way around. One is where I can segment it out. And it typically goes just like encoding. It goes left, right, well, top left, top right, bottom left. So I'm going to actually go ahead and change this one to 6. So you can kind of see this will be just kind of like the paradigm for how it means for like chat bubbles to come out. I'm not going to like worry too much about making it look super special right now.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, and I see Lars has just joined the chat. Hey, Lars. Lars is a designer for the Adobe XD team as well. So if you have any features that you're really looking for, maybe send them through. But yeah, for those of you just joining us, this is not a zombie horror show. I'm not living this down.
Are you traumatized?
I'm traumatized from it. But Jeannie is joining us from the New York office with the Behance team and designing a web experience using Adobe XD, the prototyping tool. And so right now, sort of working on the chat experience of her floral design website. And yes, we are wrapping up for the giveaway for today of the XD socks. And so we appreciate all of you who have been active in the chat today. I know you guys have been waiting. Diego saying socks, socks. Yes, the drum roll is coming soon. So sort of your last minute to ask us some more questions of anything that you want to know about from Jeannie or myself. And then we will announce the winner.
So for the design I have here, I'm just kind of thinking about like how we can make this process super smooth for designers, for floral designers specifically. So I'm going to go ahead and make this 60. Yep. And I'm going to give you like a quick checklist, and I just feel like these are the kinds of little interactions that could be super beautiful. So you could say bouquets, altar pieces.
Yeah, and Louise has a good question. When do you use personas for your designs?
That's a good question. Yeah, we didn't really do that this time, did we? I think at Behance we have a couple of personas, and they're really well established. I know Airbnb also does the same thing, where they have like pretty established, like there are hosts, there are guests, right? And so like that kind of comes in with the branding work too, is like we kind of can already establish specific personas as a pre-existing website with a large fan base. I think Behance just hit 10 million members, so we look at them and we're like, great, we can kind of look into what sections they are. If you are coming with something totally new, like let's say I was to make this website for real, I probably would have a lot more work prior to do user research before I can even come up with a persona. Like I haven't actually talked to any florists besides me at that, and I'm like, I would love to chat with people online. Some florists might be like, wow, this is actually the worst. So that's like maybe a type of user research I haven't necessarily done yet.
And then Kaylee's wondering, do you buy into trends when you're designing, or just stick with what you like or has worked for you in the past?
It depends on the trend. If I feel like the trend can answer a problem correctly, I think that's useful. Yeah. But not everything is like that.
I see people in the chat, they're wondering for the drum roll, when it's going to happen. It's happening. Oh, it started on the other side of the room. Our winner of the fabulous XD socks is Diego Ibanez. Congratulations. Woo! You have won these wonderful, beautiful, not the ones on my feet, but actually, these are mine. These are mine. You can have these. Yes. Congratulations. Very exciting. And thanks for sending in all these great questions. I know Karen has another one that is good for Jeannie. What inspired you to become a product designer?
You know, I've always wanted to work in something that had some practical purpose and meaning. Like I mentioned yesterday that I was an English major prior, and that meant a lot of working in the abstract. And I lived with someone who's a graphic designer who worked in real stuff. She made like pamphlets and people interact with it. And so I love that kind of real life implications. I really like consumer facing apps for that reason too.
Awesome, yeah, and so congratulations again, Diego, on these fabulous XD socks. And then for the rest of you, continue to send in submissions for today's challenge. Jeannie and I are gonna take a look at a couple of them in a minute, but the challenge tab in the Behance chat has more information around today's challenge, which is using the Navigo Transportation UI Kit. So make sure that you're sending those in, and Jeannie and I will pick a winner 35, 40 minutes, and you'll win a free subscription for a year to the Creative Cloud. So why don't we take a look at 2 of the submissions so far. Let's see, we have one called Transit. So I'm gonna go ahead, should we click where to?
Yeah.
Okay, where to? So we have your home here. I'm gonna go back. There's a home button down here as well. Clicking on that. Start walk to Square Station. Very nice. And you changed up the map a little bit, which is nice to see. And stop navigation. Very nice. So this is a great start. Love to see even like making it a little bit more unique, maybe playing with the colors a bit more, some of the transitions, but this is an awesome start to see. And then we're gonna change to my favorite burger. I'm curious where this one's going. Log in, it's like lunchtime for us, so it makes me hungry. Venice.
Ooh.
I like the dummy text. It's very food oriented. Chocolate cake, pudding, macaroon, marzipan.
I think there's a thing that you can actually do that for. It's like a sweets one.
Is there sweets ones?
Yeah.
I've used hipster Ipsum before instead of lorem ipsum, obviously. I'm curious, whoever made this, which site did you use for food Ipsum, whatever it is, dessert Ipsum? I don't know what it is. Let's see, new hamburger. I like that you sort of made your own map in here. It looks nice. And then, awesome. I like that there's sort of these different paths that you can take of seeing how long the car will take. This is very realistic that you can click through any of these and sort of see the map change accordingly. So that's really well done.
Really minimal top nav too.
Click the arrow and go back. Did I miss anything? Yeah, let's see. Click on new hamburger. You can see more information about it. What's this? Oh, so I can click on some of these images here and it starts to sort of scroll up. Go back. Awesome. Well, these are looking really great, so don't forget to send in your submissions for today's challenge. And we have a lot of these coming in, so we might not see all of the screens for all of these prototypes, so we apologize in advance. But we're going to take a look through as many as we can, and then Jeannie will continue designing here as well.
Yep. So I'm going ahead and I'm going to go and clean up my board a little bit, and I do this periodically, maybe like I actually try to do it every day, just so that the next day when I roll into work, I'm not like, oh God, what did I do? I can't find anything. So I'm going to go ahead and just like bring this down, and I just have different subsections here. You can see I moved our little questions, and we'll keep these on the board so that you guys, when you get the XD file, you can kind of see the questions that you've asked, and you can rewatch the live stream and see what I said about it. But here I'm going to split up the sections that I've done into smaller, shorter chunks to kind of, if I were to be to show this to a developer, they would look at it and be like, ah, yeah, I totally understand what each of these pages or like sub pages are.
Nice. So. Yeah. And for Kevin, who's wondering when is the deadline? Yes, Tim, thank you. You have around 17 minutes to submit to the challenge. It is interesting. Someone was saying, we were talking about the hipster Ipsum and lorem ipsum. Someone said there's a bacon.
Yes,
what does it just say? Bacon, 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 bacon. The
I think
whole
it's
time?
like pork, ham, loin.
Oh,
like that.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. I'm like, bacon.
Yeah.
Seems simple.
And one thing I've been thinking about is I actually don't really love this flyover style. I feel like we mentioned it earlier how it requires a lot of scrolling.
Yeah.
I think someone on day one was like, this is not consistent from your radio buttons. And I was like, you're right. Like, that's the kind of great, like, sort of practical, like, feedback that someone who is not the designer can just look at and be like, oh, that's not consistent. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll actually take those pages and I'll drag it down. And I like to do this. I have a little section here called archive. So I'll just drag these down to archive. I don't just delete the screen. I just keep it in my little archive section so that I can always refer to it later.
And Aaron's wondering, what resources do you use to stay current on industry topics?
Yeah. Actually, one thing I really like using is, I'll show you this, the news.im. I don't really know why it's called that, but this is a great little site. I don't follow this like vigorously. I don't follow it every day, but I do find it useful to kind of look at what the three like main portions of designer news, product hunt, and hacker news are kind of talking about. I don't read everything, but I do check in occasionally. So here you have designer news, and this is just what designers are talking about. A lot of them are interface designers. One is product hunt, and just these are the things that people are coming up with recently. And then hacker news, which, I think it's pretty popular. So I kind of will just click through and just look at what, oh look, right now we're live, UI UX with Claude, who was here. Oh, that's my name, Claude, Jeannie, and Paul, or Peter. So that's kind of cool. But I use this to kind of keep up with current events. I feel like things move so quickly in our industry. And I also really like Smashing Magazine. So there are articles about like how to streamline WordPress multi-site migrations. I don't even know what that means, but I should probably learn about it. And just like they sometimes will have like conversations about UI UX that I find really useful. And then lastly is A List Apart, which is another publication for people who make websites. And I find that their stuff is really useful. They have great articles. I think I was recently reading about, oh yeah, this one, accessibility. I thought this was really great. Just like what it means to design for accessibility. Yep. So I've gone ahead and I've just cleaned this up, and I've given you an alternative option for finding your location. I feel like this would be more useful. In other words, when you click this little drop down, you'd actually get this zip code pop up. And you could say like your zip code, and then you could enter your zip code, and as you fill it out, the location could actually fill out here. Okay. And then we have a little X so we can cross it out. And then maybe that way this one can actually populate. So I'm just going in and like updating the docs that I have. San Francisco. And now it's too long, so we'll just abbreviate this to CA.
Cool. So as Jeannie continues to work on these designs, we have 2 more submissions I want to take a look at for the challenge today. So make sure that you're submitting to the challenge. This one is insurance. All right, we are sorry that you have an accident. I'm going to log in. Very nice. Hit customer ID. Log in. All right, so we have a map here with a little star. Hidden location. Are you close to Fresco Market? And then find an agent nearby. Oh, nice. And they've made a little, they have their chat here, which I like. Yeah, it's very, we've been talking a lot about the chat on the stream today and designing for that. So this is really nice to see. Very relevant. And then complete. You are complete. Get well soon. Very nice. Go to your account. It's a very full experience here. Yep, so you have your customer ID. I'm gonna check that, and then you can go sort of back with this arrow all the way through. Okay, it looks like they have this little little mini hamburger guy that's kind of like this triangle going down that you can bring out your settings, which is really nice, and log out, and that's sort of like the full screen going through. This is very nice. I like this one a lot. Cool. It's a nice full experience.
And the branding kind of feels a little different. Like
yeah, it does feel very different. You have like very strong colors to identify, which is nice. And then we're gonna take a look at Save the Whales. All right.
I love whale sharks. That's what that is. That's a whale shark. Look at him. He's so cute.
Anonymous. All right, and then type in the password and Oh, very interesting. Nice. So in this frame here, like I couldn't click on this drop down yet. I was sort of going to log in, and when I hit log in, it made me sort of showed this error state here. So they wanted to make sure to show some of those states, which is nice. We haven't seen that too much in the submissions coming in, thinking about some of those end states of errors. I like this map having sort of the whale tails sticking up, and you can sort of see more information by clicking on it. Very fun. Awesome. Well, these are great submissions. Thank you for sending them in. And Jeannie and I will be picking a winner very soon. And we'll check back in with what you were working on, Jeannie.
Yep. So here I'm just making it more, I always say consistent to what we had before, just adding a little pop-up here. And this one says select a style. Since we changed, we got rid of that big popover that came over us from the right. We're gonna stick with these tooltips instead.
Yeah, and so for those of you just joining us, I know Vicky's saying, what are you making? So Jeannie is working in Adobe XD, working on a website for her floral design, and so she's going through, and these photos are your own photos of some of the work that she's done, and you can check out her Behance page and see more about like some of this project work. And Louise is saying, Jeannie, you're very organized. I really like your process.
That's really nice. I think yesterday Kevin was asking me, Kevin in the chat was like, are you labeling your...
Yeah, Jeannie showed us a sneak peek at some of the behind the Behance work.
Yeah, and they're not well labeled.
And there was so many, artboards in there, and it was really fast going through, but Kevin was asking, are your layers labeled? And I didn't ask you because I wasn't sure.
They were not.
They weren't. Oh, well, there's your answer.
So sometimes it depends. I sometimes won't organize as I go, or I'll just like do a bunch of work, maybe 3-4 hours of work, and then sit down and then organize then. Nice. And so like in the case for the file that I had yesterday, I think I just never got around to organizing it. I felt like it was already pretty straightforward, and the developer I worked with was right next to me, so I didn't feel this like huge pressure to organize it. But here they're like, I'm not so concerned with the artboard name as I am with this overall category, if that makes any sense.
And Nicholas is wondering, how do you collect research? Do you have user testing? Which is a great question. Thanks for sending it in.
Yeah, we do have user testing. We have someone in my office who's dedicated to user testing, and she, interviews people. We have someone on our community support team who is like committed also to that with her, and the two of them bring people in. We'll also have people just like live chat us and kind of talk about how they use Behance. I think that's really useful. Some of the feedback that they've given is like will be really surprising for us, and then we'll kind of test those things and see, if they make a big impact. And they always do. Like users have great sort of feedback for us. So.
Yeah, and I think, I mentioned earlier as well, like Adobe XD, the product has user testing as well. In-house, just designers here. So like I was in one yesterday with them looking at some upcoming features that they're working on, as well as obviously with users outside the company, designers and non-designers. And then also for when I'm working on like future projects, forward-looking projects, sometimes we will user test as well to sort of validate ideas. And since we're testing very far-fetched things that haven't really been done or aren't tied to any existing product team, it's really useful to get some of that user input.
Yep.
And Kelsey's wondering, what's your best advice to those who are trying to get a foot in the door for UI UX design?
I would say the best advice is to keep doing it. I actually thought about quitting UI UX.
Really?
Yeah, maybe like a year and a half ago. I was like, I'm going to be a PM with a design background. And my boss really pushed me to think about, why I got into design. And I think with any skill set, you go through like a growth phase, and then you plateau, you growth, and you plateau, and you growth, and you plateau. And the problem is that with a lot of these plateaus, you kind of don't know when it's going to move into the growth bit of it again. And so I was like kind of sitting in a plateau, and I was like, wow, this is like just going to keep going. Like, what if I never get better? And I think with his encouragement, I just kept doing it, and I found that there was like a pretty significant sort of like jump that happened shortly after of like my own design skills. Like I sensed it, and so I think don't give up even if it feels like it's kind of tough in the beginning. I think persistence is highly underrated because we're always about moving fast and breaking things, and yes, that's great for building stuff, but like not for your like personal feelings.
Gotcha. Yeah, and maybe you can clarify. Diego is wondering, what's the difference between UI and visual designer? All the different titles are still not clear.
Yeah, it's not clear even to me. It's not clear mostly because our industry doesn't have a clear idea right now. It's so new. So my title is product designer. And I know lots of people who will say I'm only a visual designer, or I'm only a interaction designer. Right. I would say visual might encompass more things like even illustration and branding, that like spills over that. And then I guess user interface design can be like a little bit more like the polish that I'm doing here, where I'm like, oh, I don't know if I love the way that this is executed. And user experience can sometimes be more like wireframey, general user flows and personas. But in my role at my company, I do all of them. That's just like
and
how
I think
that works.
To Aaron on the chat's point, he says, I think titles all depend on where you work, and I think that's sort of where Jeannie is starting to get to, is like it's not necessarily super defined in the industry right now of what every single type of title of a designer does. It depends on the company, it depends on what people are really thinking. My title is experienced designer, so you know, it sort of covers a little bit of combination of different pieces. And yeah, to Nicholas's point, which I think is great, designers wear many hats. Super true. I definitely agree with that.
Yep. So here I am. This is something we talked about a lot, is designing responsibly. We have about 30 minutes left for the design work, but you know, I'm just going to break down this profile page into a tablet responsive version and then maybe mobile. So I'll just show you what that kind of looks like for me. So I've gone ahead and made an artboard here. When I click this artboard button, I have all these artboards on the top, and I just selected iPad, and this is what I got, like so. And then I've gone and I've just ported over the kind of same like logo header into this. And you'll also notice that I actually broke down the logo a little bit. So originally I had the name of our company, Botanica Neue, in there, and then now I actually just took it away because I felt like it's fine, like on the web version, on the mobile version, mobile web, we don't have to actually show it. So we still have the top. I've also maintained these little illustrations that we did. And if I feel like it's too much, I can always just take one out. So I'll take out this circle.
That's good. And Colin, welcome to the stream. I know you just joined and says, wow, everything looks great. And you mentioned I missed part 2 yesterday. No worries. Yeah, Jeannie is in Adobe XD, the prototyping tool, and just walking out what her personal design site would look like for her floral designs. And so yesterday we really worked on the expanding from not just the landing experience, but Jeannie was working on the profile as well. And so now sort of getting into some of the tablet, mobile screens.
Yep. So for this mobile screen, I'm going to go ahead and drop in, I think the drop shadow doesn't show up very well here, but there's actually a huge drop shadow to kind of denote that this is the top of the profile. And I'll go ahead and just recreate his profile. So a lot of this is just like trying things out and making sure it looks good, scaling things down to make it fit. So I'll just copy elements over from my desktop version and go ahead and drop, those in. If there are like situations where I think the font is too big on this, I will go ahead and change it. I also really like using XD's link, where you can kind of link it to a device and show it there. Today we might not have enough time to do that, but we'll just show it like this. And you can also look at the grid from this point of view. I find that this grid is kind of small, so maybe I'm not gonna like stick to it too closely. I'm more interested in just making sure that the page itself kind of looks normal.
Yeah, we talked about grids a little bit in previous streams, but do you always design with a grid? And you know, when you're designing with Behance, does Behance think about the grid?
Behance does think. You know what? I'm gonna make this default. Make default. Great. I'm gonna apply that here. I really like that grid. We do design on a grid. This one just happens to be the one that I'm using right now, which is 12 columns with 20 pixel gutters in between them. But use default. There you go. All right. Now there's something to like kind of push up against. So here, I'm gonna just make a couple of adjustments. And all I'm doing is really following the visual language that I already established here, right? This was a full width image, so it should probably be a full width image in the background. This was a box that floated over the page, over the image that fit into the grid. So I'll just go ahead and do the same thing here. It doesn't have to be this like, I think a lot of people like really stress about responsive, but I tend not to. I just kind of do it and then work out the kinks later.
Yeah, and it's about your last minute to submit to the challenge, so make sure that you get those in. I know people are wondering the deadline. And for those of you in the chat, like Marcin, who was curious about some of the developer specs, yeah, I had talked a little bit about that and did a little demo earlier. And so I don't think we're going to go into too much detail on it again now, but all of these streams will be posted to YouTube, so you can watch a replay later and check that out to see sort of how to get that done.
Yeah. So you can see here, I already like kind of changed the layout of this. Even as I was doing it, I was like, ooh, that's actually not what I really want.
So changing it to more center.
Yeah. I just thought it was kind of strange to have the, because I can't really have this section, this little contact section, float or, you know, be matched up with the text and look right. So I'm just going to go ahead and just put it here. And then that way, this kind of just looks, I feel like this looks nice and neat, and like you can kind of see it better here without all the blue. I think that's really pretty.
Very nice. Yeah, and I know in the chat there's a lot of conversation around, hey guys, is it difficult to learn this program for those who don't have any experience in UX design? I know Jung-hoon is sending that in and asking, said, but I'm pretty good at Photoshop. I think if you're using Photoshop, I think XD is very simple and easy to learn. The interface is a lot cleaner and pretty straightforward. Also in the onboarding experience of XD, there is a sample piece in there, and it gives you a little bit of information of how to start linking things together and sort of a little bit more step-by-step to get you started. And so it's been a pretty easy learning curve as a product.
Yep. And like I said before, I like to think of it as being tool agnostic. It's not about what tool you use. Like that doesn't, I mean, that just helps your process. But I think what's really key is that the thinking behind it, you know, we always talk about design thinking. I don't really like that phrase, but the thinking behind how you think and build products is key. I think that's where we are lacking as an industry. We focus a lot on should this tool or that tool be the one I master. I just prefer XD because we've always worked in Creative Cloud and I really like it. It's really fast.
And Nicholas is wondering, how long does it take you to go from mockups to a final handoff?
It depends.
It varies,
like,
for sure.
Some things are one drop down. There's someone just wants a drop down, right? Then that can just take like 5 minutes. And something, or 10 minutes, and then sometimes it's like this entire thing. I probably wouldn't deliver something like this without seriously considering every single page and case of it, at least for like a minimum viable product.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of iteration, I would say, that happens, and a lot of sort of reviews and discussions. So it depends, you know, what it really means by final handoff. So to really get something shipped, a lot of times we're working on a lot of iterations, and you know, there might be some user testing in between as well. And so you're constantly sort of updating your mocks and adjusting.
Yep. Maybe we can make this kind of wider.
Cool. And while Jeannie's working on that, let's jump over to my screen and we can take a look at some of the submissions that have been coming in. So we have another one here, Explore. All right, let's see. We're going to click on Grace. And again, we have another chat interface, very different than the one we saw in the other submission, which is nice. So the different styling here, it's a little... we have different blue tones. All right, I'm gonna press the arrow going back, and looks like we have a little hamburger here to pull this out. I like sort of that transition sliding in, and I can close that on up.
Yeah.
Awesome, so this is really nice. I mean, it's very like minimal screens, but a very full experience and unique design to what we've seen in the UI kit. So awesome job. And then we will take another look. We have travel app concepts. Go. So I'm gonna click on that. All right, I'm curious what happens if am I gonna like this?
Ooh,
oh, there's a lot of different UI that comes up. Looks like click on this person. And now we have, you know, sort of that full look at all the people. I'm gonna click on her. See her profile, okay. Drinks, oh, can't click on it. Friends. All right, and then the arrow back, and then it looks like I can close off, so I don't see it anymore. Very nice. It's interesting to see sort of your use of bringing up all these different kind of little mini widgets in here. And then let's take a look at one more submission that we got in, Safe Haven Locator. So it looks like I can click on one of these pieces here, and then it will sort of map out my route. Right, so what I expected, clicking on another one, sort of adjusts it. That's very nice. I don't think we've seen that yet.
also very practical, safe haven, and the idea of like refugee or like giving people like the right nice places to stay when things are not going well. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept here, having sort of this view in here and sort of that radius of what's being affected. All right, and then we have the, you know, if you bike versus if you walk. And then I'd love to see, you know, if I change it here, this adjusting the map a little bit, so that I know as a user that it's changed, but it's nice to see. Okay, we click the person and click on another one. Nice, and again, a very different chat style we have here. This sort of one is overlaid on top versus another screen, but this is very polished, like very finished, and it looks great. And so, awesome. These are great submissions. Thanks for sending them in. Martin on the chat, can I still submit? You can't submit for the daily challenge for this particular segment. We just closed off. However, there is a live stream coming on right after us with Peter. And it's the same daily challenge, so you will be able to submit to his, don't worry. It is the challenge tab in the Behance chat. You can check out more information on how to do that. But for now, we have our submissions in, and we'll be picking a winner very soon. Yeah, everybody, Aaron saying nice work, everyone. Matthias, make it pop.
Make it pop.
Yeah, but these are looking really great, so thank you guys.
Make it bigger. Make it red.
Great, so we'll check back in with what Jeannie's has on her screen.
There we go. Thanks, friend. And here we are. We're just finishing up the rest of this design. It's not too complicated. We're not agonizing over it because we know that there'll probably be some sort of library that we can use to put the this kind of like Pinteresty masonry image layout in, and you can kind of see that this is how I would kind of imagine a tablet version of this page to look like. And what's important here when you're doing responsive design is to keep the hierarchy the same. I think that's where a lot of people run into problems. They're like, oh my god, if I don't do mobile first, it's gonna fail, like the design is gonna collapse. But that's actually not true. I think the key really is to have clear information hierarchy and to maintain that hierarchy across different screens. So in this case, you know, the order of this hasn't changed. This little box exists on top of a larger box here, and I keep that paradigm, even though it might look a little strange. That's kind of like something I could go back and tweak, right, in both designs. I just kind of kept it consistent for the sake of our little project here. Here we have tags, and they float on the image, so I could probably still have that continue to float on the image here. And then underneath this larger box, I have the grid of images below. In the same style as the masonry grid of images I had prior, but I'm going to keep it at 2 columns instead of 3. So nice. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, Blaze is wondering, why is Lambert Floral Studio all caps in the paragraph? Is that intentional or just...
That's just what I copied from their description, actually. So I think it's intentional in the sense of, like, I copied it from someone's profile. Like, I literally... Lambert Floral Studio is a studio in San Francisco, and I just went to their website and was like, all right, I'll just take her description text. But that's because I'm designing, I can't control the text, right? In other words, after I'm done creating this profile, other users will come in and populate the text. So I just want to give as realistic a explanation of like what that kind of text could look like. This happens on Behance all the time, right? If I were to design the project page for Behance, I could either give you like the perfect length and width and size for the text, but it's better to be realistic and kind of take examples from the wild of like, here's how that would look like.
Yeah, Marcin's wondering, I know you said that maybe you're repeating this question, so I apologize if we didn't see it earlier, but does XD have any unique function / feature that Sketch doesn't have? And I think one that we love that we've been showing off a lot also is sort of that interaction of repeat grid. It's just sort of this fun, easy workflow piece that you can quickly replicate and duplicate items in a grid and start to automatically edit and drop photos in and I don't know if you want to show really quickly a repeat grid example.
Yeah, so one repeat grid example is like, let's say I were to create a different kind of profile here to show like a list of profiles. I could probably just make it directly here. I love socks. And then group all of the objects together like so, and hit repeat grid, and you'd be able to see boom, boom, boom.
Right away, yeah. Drag it out and have it all. And then, but you can also still go in and change the text, you know, throughout to make it unique, so it doesn't all look absolutely the same. And you know, that's a really fun feature.
Yep. So I'm going in now, and I'm just populating this with my like a mobile design. Just to kind of test what that would look like. Maybe on mobile, I would say, hey, mobiles are so small. There's no reason to like clutter the screen with tons of these little like graphics that we had. We talked about scattering them across the screen earlier. So we'll just go ahead and just, I also do that a lot with mobile. I actually strip down a lot of things that I think aren't necessary. So like maybe these tags aren't actually necessary for a mobile display. So maybe I just won't have them. And I think, you know, right now we're rushing through this because it's on our last day and we only have like 15 minutes left. But normally I would probably try to make a serious case for why things need to show up at a specific place. Like on mobile, I would say like, this really should come up here and this button should be visible immediately because this is what I want a mobile user on the web to do, versus like someone who's working on desktop. So, you know, right now I'm just like, oh, we don't need tags, get rid of it. But I think that's probably not how I would do it in real life. I'd probably put a little bit more thought in it. I'll go ahead and turn on my grid for this. It's just giving me a little 4-column grid. And I actually think this grid is a little tight, so I'll just make sure that let's see if I can bump up this.
And while Jeannie's working on that, we're going to take another look at some more of the submissions that are coming in. We're getting a lot, so Feast Finder is another one. Find and book an exclusive table and eatery. All right, so I'm going to create an account. Hunt. I like some of the style that you have, sort of this arching design in here. Looks like maybe that would be one of your style guides elements that you have, sort of the unique to your app. And I'm going to click on one of these and see more specificity around the restaurant. Very nice. Book it, and I get a table. Nice, and a good use of the blur. You know, you have the confirmation coming up, show me the way, and you have your map here as well. You can click on restaurant again, or I can use the hamburger. Nice, you have the pullover with more nav of this app. They're about us. Looks like they all go back here. I can switch to, a list view. Very nice.
I like the name.
Great.
Just the name
Feast
alone.
Finder.
Feast Finder.
I know my tummy's rumbling. I'm getting hungry. It's so close past lunch. All right. Well, great submission. Thank you for sending that in. We have Wave Finder here. I say, let's go.
That's pretty.
Very nice. Yeah, very nice design. Very clean. And we're going to look at beginners, intermediate. I like sort of this look. You can sort of imagine swiping through, which I really like. Since this is mobile and that would be your interaction, so I'm going to say go there. I like the interaction coming up. If I click on the wave, nice. This is really nice visually as well, which I enjoy. I like this surfer one. Awesome. Not sure how I get there, but it looks like there's more screens of sort of these different waves. Oh, for the intermediate. Awesome. And we have Smart Shopping, Vivo. Need a gift? Let's go.
Oh, I love this.
Perfect.
I have a French.
You're saying that because you see the dog.
No, I have a French bulldog, so
Oh, do
am
you?
I inclined? Well, it's more like I actually love how there's layers to this. I think generally I like layers and things like that too.
Yeah. Yeah, and some interesting use of gradients down here.
No, it's Kevin's. That's why, because
search
Kevin
product.
yesterday had similar. You know, I think this is like something
Yeah,
that he
aesthetic.
excels is like he excels in like hierarchy and understanding like where the layers should be.
Ryan, dropping it in. Great, thanks for sending this in, Kevin. And then we have one more we're gonna take a look at now. Doggo.
So
All
cute.
right, so I'm gonna continue with email and get in. Oh, and it looks like there are different locations. I like the dog photos in here. All right, I'm gonna click
Nice touch.
to see a couple more. I can go back. Here's sort of the nearby dogs. Buster. All right. And if I hit the tree, you sort of filled out a lot of these different experiences. When I click those icons, we have sort of Central Park, and I can go back here, and then some statistics. Very nice. Awesome, great submissions, you guys. We will pick a winner very soon. We have a couple more submissions to look through, and then we will pick our winner for today's challenge.
So I'm going ahead and I'm actually doing some prototyping work here. It's nothing crazy. I'm just really trying to think about what different pages would kind of look like. And, you know, some of these I've linked up before, but I might want to undo. So, for example, I have a loading page here, and I think that's kind of useful to have. So I'll just go ahead and I'll remove it by just dragging from something that I already did and bringing it elsewhere. And then here, I'm going to take this and drag it down to my florist profile. So with these prototypes, I don't, you know how we spent all that time designing interim states of like error states and what that means. But I think we don't need to always use that to link back and forth between things. I think it's more important for us to be able to just show like the flow when we're prototyping, and then go ahead and show all the possible screens afterwards when we're presenting to developers. So I'm not going to show like, see, like here I have something where you're hovering over an email, or you have an error state for a valid email. Like I probably don't need to show a ton of these. Maybe I can like show you like just one or two of them when I prototype. And I can go ahead and skip. See here I have a null state one and empty profile, and I'm just going to go ahead and skip that because it kind of doesn't matter. That's not what I want. So,
yeah, and it's great to see. I mean, you can see like when Jeannie zooms out how many artboards are in this file, and yeah, it's still like it's so fast. I find that XD is probably one of our faster applications that we have.
Sometimes I zoom out too far and it's hard to figure out which
which screen.
Yeah. There you go. Did that work? Yeah, that worked.
Nice. And once you hook up all the different screens, we can take a look at sort of like the playthrough of everything that we have.
Great. And all right, I think that's everything. We'll find out. We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll find out in a minute if there are any that aren't hooked up.
Yeah. Maybe this guy can also go here. And yes. And then we'll give this a quick change.
Well, yeah, we'll take a look at everything that Jeannie's designed over the past. This is our third day with Jeannie, and if you missed the first 2 days, don't worry. All of these replays will be on the YouTube channel, so you can watch them back if you missed anything. But yeah, we'll go through this, and then we will take a look at the last submissions that we had for the challenge and pick the daily winner.
Yeah.
Cool.
And to answer Kevin's question, you can link elements on a page. You can link either or from one element to another or from page to page. In this case, because I'm not doing something so crazy where there are like lots of elements on the page and I haven't fleshed out every version of the page, I don't need to do that yet. Probably if I were to spend more time on this, I would go through and actively make sure that all the links go through correctly.
Yeah, so when you do the prototyping, like Jeannie's saying, there's you can select just a button and say when you hit this button, I want it to go to this screen, or you can select the entire artboard and say from this artboard, go to this artboard. But yeah, you can do that specificity currently in Adobe XD.
Yep. So here we have what we had before from the beginning. We have a landing page. We have 2 parameters. I'm going to select one parameter and I get a little zip code. So I'm going to type in my zip code. See, I already broke it. Something didn't link. But here's my zip code, and it would populate it with San Francisco, California. Oh, see, because I linked, this is the thing. If you are lazy and you don't unlink things, you will have problems later. So for example, in this case, you can see this, that I had linked San Francisco to something that I had archived earlier. So I tend not to prototype like this, where I would make a few screens, prototype, and make a few screens and prototype. I'd probably just make everything and then go back and do it. And to link between specific elements, so you can see it's just this element. You can select an element in prototype, like this one or this one, and you'll see like a little arrow, and that's how you would select it. So in this case, we're gonna just make this go that way, and see if we can link these back and forth.
Cool, yeah, Kevin, hopefully that answered your question. Let us know if you're still curious about some of those hookups in XD.
I'm definitely missing one hookup, but anyway, so here we are. We're gonna select a perfect style. We're gonna select one of the styles. If we select refine style, the bottom would change. Oh, we're missing something's wrong here.
While Jeannie's looking those up, maybe we'll take a look at the last few submissions that we have for the challenge today. We can pick a winner, and then we can look back through and take a look at all of the pieces we had in. This is sort of up your alley, Jeannie. We have some flower.
Yeah.
We have some flower submissions. So this is Flower Finder.
Clearly trying to sway the judges.
Ooh, yeah, we have. I hope we don't have a zombie one from earlier. That will not sway me in the correct direction. All right, Flower Finder. All right. Let's see, I will press continue, and we have, okay, sort of our navigation profile, newsfeed. I'll click on profile and see Maria's profile, and I can click back and then go to the newsfeed. Great, so we have sort of these little component elements in here for the timeline, and then find flowers. Great, so yeah, you have all the different locations for all these flower places. If I click on one, look how I get kind of zoomed in, honeysuckle fields. I'm curious, is this gonna come up?
This would be a very useful app.
We have, oh, it just sort of starts, yeah, so you can go directly to the flowers. Awesome, I'm gonna go back, your gallery. All right, so we have some photo flowers there, and order prints. Oh, looks like it's the same one here. Apply, confirm, and I can check that off. Great. All right, that's an awesome submission. Flowers, maybe
that's
swaying
really
the judges. No,
a little bit.
Yeah, Plaza. And click welcome. I like the transition in. This is a very bold sort of visual design as well, just like one color, the font here. I'm gonna press continue. All right, we're changing it up. Very nice. Transition in. I like sort of this use. We have some blur happening here, and I can go through coffee and tea, coffee trip, and see more information. This is like a very nice clean design here as well. You can go there and, you know, sort of using those simple, just unique, like the pink color and this sort of off black gray color here as well. Seems like a very full design. You can search something in here, and I like, again, like this use of the blur is really nice. And then our last submission is another flower submission.
I feel like this
you're really
this is
very specific towards you, man. Catering to the judges.
I appreciate it.
All right, I'm gonna wrap this up. So what if we go on a ride? Great, find a flower. Fill this in with the blur as well. This is great. So do you have any favorites from today?
I really quite like these blur effects. I think there was one in the the images, use of images and changing this is really pretty. I really love Vivo.
Vivo.
Oh, I love this wave one too.
I really like this wave one a bit here. This wave finder.
Yep.
I thought was really well done and clean, simple as well.
Yep. And then can you go to the Vivo one? Feast.
Not sure where Vivo is. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one was really great.
This surf one a lot here as well.
Yep, for sure. I would pick between the flower one. Oh, I love this one too. There's so many. I would pick between this one or the flower one. This one.
This one
I
here.
think either would be good, or
I
the
do think
wave
this
one.
one is a nice full experience, and
It feels like also there's some thought process that's been put into the text. Do you see like the layout for the profile? Go back one more. There's like something about like thinking about gamifications for your achievements, and not just because it's about flowers. It's really about the hierarchy and thinking about like how we would be able to do it. So
yeah,
I think
great.
that
So
one.
I think we have chosen our winner for today. So congratulations for whoever's design this is for Flowerizer. Ooh, it's a mouthful. But thank you for joining us today on the stream. Thanks, Jeannie, for coming in from New York to join us today. And stay tuned. We have another stream right after this with Peter. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks for spending time with us.
Let me see that.